The stars above Varnas were hidden by steel. Hundreds of alien warships filled the blackness, their hulls glowing with the heat of power cores. Their weapon ports opened like the eyes of predators. Every ship belonged to the Grand Coalition, a union of 23 alien species who had joined forces to stop the Karth Dominion from swallowing another world. Each vessel was built for war-towering cruisers with layered armor, carriers with vast hangar bays, destroyers bristling with missile pods. They formed a living wall of firepower that could crush a planet. In the command hub of the flagship Vorun, Supreme Admiral Trask of the Verdant people stood before the main display. His tall, scaled form gleamed under the blue lighting. His voice was deep and steady as he gave orders to range the fleet, bring the forward line tighter. He told his bridge crew, "The Karth will not break us here." A ripple of agreement spread across the alien officers in the room. The Coalition was ready for war. They expected the Karth Dominion to arrive within the hour. Then a sensor alert broke the rhythm of the bridge. The junior officer looked up from his station, brow ridges rising. "Admiral, we have a new contact. Small ship. Very small. Human registry." The word human caused a stir. Some officers exchanged puzzled glances. Others laughed softly. "Humans?" One of them muttered. "They are not part of this war. They have no fleet here." On the screen, the object appeared. A single human vessel emerged from hyperspace, far smaller than the Coalition's warships. It was not sleek or beautiful like the silver craft of the Lyran, nor vast and intimidating like the blocky carriers of the Breaktel. The human ship looked functional, plain like a working machine built for use, not for display. Its hull was gray, worn in places, with visible repairs and mismatched plating. Trask narrowed his eyes. "How many are aboard?" 30, the officer replied. After checking, no heavy weapons detected, no escort. That made the room stir again. 30 crew, no visible heavy weapons, and they had come here into a war zone alone. "They will be destroyed in the first exchange," one of the tactical officers said bluntly. But on the main display, the human ship didn't flinch or turn away. It moved steadily toward the heart of the Coalition formation, passing between enormous alien cruisers that could have swallowed it whole. Trask folded his arms. "Put me through to them." A moment later, the comm link opened. The face of a man appeared on the screen. He looked to be in his early 40s, with short brown hair, steady eyes, and the calm air of someone who was not easily shaken. His uniform was simple, without excessive rank markings. "This is Captain Daniel of the human vessel Resolve," he said, his tone polite but firm. "Requesting permission to join your battle line." Trask studied him for a moment. "Captain Daniel, this is a Coalition military operation against the Karth Dominion. Your ship is small and underarmed. I strongly recommend you return to human space immediately. We're here to help," Daniel replied simply. There was no pride in his voice, no bravado, only quiet certainty. Some of the alien officers in the background scoffed. "Help? With that ship, there will be more trouble than aid." Trask kept his expression still. "Captain, the Dominion will arrive in force. This will be one of the largest battles in Coalition history. Why risk your crew?" Daniel's answer was direct. "Because you called for allies, and we came." For a moment, the bridge of the Vorun was silent. Trask had dealt with many species, but humans were still a mystery to him. Their fleets were small compared to other powers, their colonies scattered. Yet they had a reputation for showing up in conflicts they were not required to fight. "Very well," Trask said at last. "You may join the rear guard. Stay out of the direct line until ordered." "Understood," Daniel said, and the screen went dark. The human ship slipped into position at the far edge of the formation, dwarfed by the towering bulk of the Coalition vessels around it. But there was something in its steady movement that drew Trask's attention more than he cared to admit. The Resolve was quiet inside. The hum of the engines filled the narrow corridors. In the main control room, the crew moved with calm precision. They were not a large team, only 30, but each person seemed to know their job completely. Lieutenant Mara, the navigation officer, looked at Daniel. "They don't want us here." Daniel nodded once. "That's fine. We're not here for them to want us. We're here because the Karth need to be stopped." In the engineering bay, Chief Ramos was checking the status of several strange devices, stacked neatly along the walls. They were sealed inside reinforced casings, their purpose not obvious to anyone who didn't know what they were for. Almost ready. Ramos called over the comm. Good, Daniel replied. We may not get a second chance. Back aboard the Vorun. Some officers continued to mock the humans under their breath. They came all this way just to watch, one said. They think bravery is enough to win battles, another added, but Rollo, the Varnian tactician, said nothing. His large golden eyes stayed fixed on the small human ship. He had seen battle many times and had learned to read the difference between those who were bluffing and those who were waiting. The humans, he decided, were not bluffing. They are planning something, he murmured to himself. Outside, space. Remain still for the moment. The Karth Dominion had not yet arrived, but every captain could feel it coming, the weight of enemy presence. Pressing at the edge of the system, from his command seat, Daniel looked at the tactical map. The coalition fleets were impressive, yes, but they were braced for a straight fight, and the Karth would not make it easy. He knew the Dominion's reputation. They fought like a machine, their ships moving with clockwork precision, their weapons designed to tear through shields and armor alike. A straight fight would bleed the coalition badly, which was why the resolve was here. When the first ripple of hyperspace distortion lit up the sensors, every ship's alarms began to sound. They're here, someone said over the coalition comm network. One after another, massive Karth warships emerged from the void, their black and crimson hulls bristling with weapons. Their formation was perfect three attack lines, with their flagship in the center. The sheer size of the fleet made even the veteran captains on the coalition side feel a flicker of unease. In the middle of the formation, the human ship held position. Daniel gave a single order to his crew. Steady? Not yet. The battle was about to begin. But for the resolve, the moment to act had not come. Not yet. The space between the two fleets was like a silent storm about to break. On one side, the coalition ships formed their massive wall of armor and weapons. On the other, the Karth Dominion fleet spread across the void like a shadow, their black and crimson hulls catching the dim light of the nearby star. The Karth moved with cold precision. Their ships were shaped like blades, sharp edges glinting. In the darkness, every vessel kept perfect formation, as if they were all parts of a single machine. At the heart of their fleet floated the Dominion flagship, vast, angular, and bristling with weapon arrays. It was not only larger than the other Karth ships, but also heavily protected by layered shields. An escort craft from the Vorun, Admiral Trask watched the enemy's arrival with steady eyes. The Coalition's War Council had predicted the Karth might send a large force, but seeing it in person was different. The scale of their power was enough to make even veteran commanders feel the weight of the coming fight. Transmit one final warning to the Dominion, Trask ordered. A communication officer opened the channel, broadcasting across the system. Attention Karth Dominion Fleet. This is the Grand Coalition. You have invaded restricted space. Turn back immediately or face destruction. The message was sent in every known trade language. The reply came seconds later in the harsh tones of the Karth tongue. We will not leave. Varnus belongs to the Dominion. Leave or be destroyed. The voice was cold. Without emotion, Trask exhaled slowly. All ships prepare for battle. In the rear formation, the Resolve held its position. Captain Daniel sat in the command chair, his eyes scanning the tactical map. The small human ship was surrounded by vessels many times its size, their weapons already powering up. Daniel's crew moved quietly, checking systems and monitoring the strange equipment stored in the cargo bay. Lieutenant Mara glanced at her captain. Orders, sir. Wait, Daniel said simply. They're going to start firing any second. Mara pressed. Yes, Daniel replied, but if we move too early, we'll waste the only advantage we have, in engineering. Chief Ramos was crouched beside one of the reinforced casings. Inside, faint lights pulsed in rhythm, like the heartbeat of some hidden machine. He tapped his comm. Captain, the devices are ready. If we get within range, we can deploy them fast. Good, Daniel said. Keep them on standby. The The coalition fleet began to shift. The forward cruisers moved into attack positions, their shield generators flaring to life. Carriers opened their hangar bays, releasing squadrons of small strike craft that spread out in protective arcs. Energy surged through the network of ships. Weapons charging, crews bracing for impact. Some of the alien commanders still doubted the humans. Over the comms, Daniel could hear quiet remarks passed between officers on other ships. "They will hide in the back until the fight is over," one voice said. "Perhaps they came for glory without risk," another added. But Rollo, the Varnian tactician aboard the Voron, spoke differently. His deep, deliberate voice carried across the shared channel. "Do not assume weakness because you do not understand the purpose of another's presence. The humans came for a reason." The channel went silent after that. Then, without further warning, the first Karth strike came from the Dominion fleet. A wave of long-range plasma fire surged forward, crossing the void in streaks of blinding light. The coalition shields flared as the first impacts landed, energy dispersing in brilliant flashes. A second wave followed instantly, forcing the forward line to adjust positions. Coalition ships answered in kind. Heavy cannons thundered, sending pulses of destructive energy across the battlefield. Missile salvos arced through space, leaving trails of fire before slamming into Karth shields. The emptiness between the two fleets turned into a storm of light and metal. The battle had begun. From the Resolve, the view was overwhelming. The human crew watched as Titanic warships exchanged blows, each strike powerful enough to shatter a smaller vessel in a single hit. But Daniel's eyes stayed calm, tracking the Karth flagship's slow, deliberate advance. "They're keeping it in the middle of their formation," Mara said. "They know it's the heart of their fleet." Daniel replied, "They'll protect it at all costs." Chief Ramos's voice came over the comm again. "Captain, if we're going to get close enough to deploy, we'll need to move through their escort line." "That won't be easy." Daniel nodded to himself. "We'll do it when the moment comes." The coalition fought with everything they had. The alien fleets were disciplined, their ships coordinating strikes with precision. But the Karth pressed forward, their formation unbroken, their weapons cutting through shields and armor. The coalition frigates were already burning, their crews abandoning ship as rescue craft raced to pull them from the wreckage. In the Voron's command hub, Admiral Trask's voice rang out over the fleet channel. "Hold the line. We must not let them break through." The human ships still hadn't moved out by the battle's 10th minute. The Karth had pushed dangerously close to the coalition's center. Their flagship loomed larger now, its weapon banks glowing with charged energy. If it reached optimal firing range, it could tear a hole in the coalition formation and break the defense entirely. Trask noticed the Resolve still idling at the rear. His voice sharpened over the comm. "Human vessel, if you have any intention to fight, now is the time. Otherwise, withdraw." Daniel's voice came back calm as ever. "Not yet." Several officers on the coalition channel muttered in disbelief. Trask's jaw tightened. "You will be destroyed if you delay much longer." Daniel didn't answer this time. He was watching something the others had not yet noticed: a slight shift in the Karth formation. A small gap opening between two of their escort ships as they adjusted positions to deal with a flanking attack. Mara saw it too. "Sir, that's a path." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Exactly." The Resolve came alive. Engines flared bright, and the small human ship broke from its idle position, accelerating faster than expected. Its gray hull streaked past larger coalition vessels, heading straight for the narrow opening in the Karth lines. Coalition officers shouted warnings. "Karth fire will tear them apart. They're going straight into the killing zone." But Daniel's crew moved with perfect coordination. The ship weaved through streams of plasma fire, making sharp turns that larger vessels could never attempt. Shields flickered under grazing hits, but the Resolve kept going. Rollo, watching from the Voron, felt his eyes widen. "They're not charging blindly," he said softly. "They're aiming for the flagship." The Karth noticed the small vessel approaching and shifted their escorts to intercept. But the Resolve was already inside their perimeter, moving too fast and too close for the bigger ships to line up accurate shots. Daniel's voice over the internal comm was steady. "Ramos, be ready. Devices are primed, Ramos answered. Just say the word. The human ship darted between two enemy destroyers. So close the crew could see the crimson glow of the Karth weapons along their flanks. Then it broke into open space, and there it was, the Dominion flagship. Looming like a fortress in the void. Mara looked at Daniel. Sir, we're in range. Daniel's expression didn't change. Not yet. We get one shot at this, and I wanted to count. The resolve swept along the flagship's outer shields, every sensor locked on its target. The devices in the cargo bay began to hum, their lights brightening as power surged into them. The crew could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the moment. Hold steady, Daniel said quietly. Outside, the battle still raged. But in this narrow stretch of space, a single human ship was preparing to change everything. The battle raged all around the resolve, but inside the small human ship, a quiet urgency filled the air. Captain Daniel sat straight in his chair, eyes locked on the tactical display before him. The Dominion flagship was huge, its dark hull glowing with dangerous energy. Every second that passed brought it closer to breaking through the coalition line. Daniel knew what he had to do, but it was risky. His ship was small and lightly armed. The real power lay in the strange devices hidden deep inside the cargo bay. Lieutenant Mara, Daniel said without looking away from the screen, prepare the deployment sequence. This is the moment we have trained for. Mara nodded, fingers flying across her console. Ready when you are, sir. Below decks, Chief Engineer Ramos was already at his station, monitoring the strange crates sealed tight with reinforced locks. Each crate held one of the special pulse emitters, tiny machines designed to disrupt the enemy's technology. They were not weapons in the usual sense. Instead of firing projectiles or energy bolts, they would attach themselves to enemy ships and disable their systems from within. Ramos glanced up as Daniel's voice came over the intercom. Deploy in 5. He gave the signal, and the ship's hatch to the drone bay slid open with a hiss. Outside, the battlefield was chaos. Explosions lit the void in bursts of fire and light. Karth warships moved swiftly, trying to intercept the small human ship before it could get close to the flagship. Missiles streaked towards the Resolve, but its nimble engines and careful piloting allowed it to dodge them one by one. Incoming missile, Mara warned. The crew watched as the missile passed dangerously close, missing by mere meters. Daniel's voice was calm. Evasive maneuvers. Maintain course, with precise control. The Resolve twisted sharply to the left, slipping through a narrow gap between two massive Karth destroyers. The human ship's shields flared as it absorbed grazing fire, but the hull held steady. Deploying drones, Daniel announced. The hatch opened fully, and out poured dozens of tiny drones. Each no bigger than a fist, they sped away from the Resolve in all directions, their surfaces glowing faintly as they activated. Mara tracked their movement on her screen. Drones are moving toward the flagship and surrounding ships. Target locks confirmed. The drones moved with purpose, weaving through the battle, small and fast enough to avoid most enemy fire. Their mission was clear: attach to the largest enemy ships and activate the pulse emitters. On board the Dominion flagship, alarms began to blare suddenly. Karth officers rushed to their consoles, eyes wide with shock. Multiple breaches detected. A voice shouted, "Drones have attached to the hull." The Dominion flagship's commander cursed under his breath. Deploy countermeasures. Destroy those drones? Missile launchers and laser turrets focused on the incoming drones. But the tiny machines were already inside the ship's outer defenses. The pulse emitters began activating one by one. Back on the Resolve, Chief Ramos watched the feedback from the drones carefully. Pulses are firing. Systems on the flagship are starting to fail. Daniel exhaled slowly. Keep monitoring. This is just the beginning. Suddenly, the flagship shuddered violently. Its shields flickered, and then began to drop in strength. The huge energy beams it had been charging for a massive strike faltered and went dark. Across the coalition fleet, cheers and surprised gasps echoed through the comm channels. Trask, on the Vorun, leaned forward in his command chair. What just happened? Rollo, the Varnian tactician, answered quickly. The human ship They have disabled the flagship systems with some kind of internal attack. Trask's eyes widened. Impressive. Keep pressure on them. Meanwhile, the resolve was not done. The drones moved to other large Karth warships, attaching themselves quickly and releasing pulses that caused engines to sputter and weapon systems to go offline. Enemy vessels losing power, Mara reported. Several have dropped out of formation. The coalition fleet saw their chance. With the Karth flagship crippled and escort ships struggling, they pushed forward, firing with renewed hope. Daniel kept the resolve moving. We need to stay alive. If we fall now, all is lost. The human ship dodged missile salvos and bursts of plasma fire. Its small size and speed made it a hard target. Every close call was met with tight teamwork and calm nerves from the crew. Ramos spoke over the comm. Pulse emitters are holding steady, but some drones have been destroyed. We need to launch replacements. Daniel nodded. Prepare more drones. We can't afford to lose this advantage. The crew worked fast, loading new drones into the launch bay. The second wave sped out into the battle, renewing the assault on the Karth ships. The tide of battle began to turn. The Karth Dominion's machines, once feared for their power, now struggled to keep up. Their formation broke apart as more ships, lost weapons or engines. The coalition fleet surged forward, pressing the attack. War cries and calls for victory filled the comm channels. Still, Daniel kept his focus. He knew the battle was far from over. We've slowed their flagship, he said to Mara. But the Dominion will fight hard to regain control. Mara nodded. Do you think the Karth have more surprises? Daniel looked at the stars outside, thinking, probably. But we have one thing they don't, the element of surprise. As the resolve continued to weave through the wreckage of space, the human crew prepared for whatever came next. Because sometimes being small was the greatest strength of all. The void around the planet Varnus was alive with fire and fury. The Karth Dominion's fleet staggered under the sudden assault of the human ship's secret weapons. The pulse emitters attached to their ships continued to disrupt key systems, leaving massive vessels drifting powerless. Captain Daniel leaned forward in the Resolve's command chair, eyes sharp on the tactical screen. The battle was changing, but he knew the fight was far from over. Lieutenant Mara, he said, voice steady, prepare to move into attack position. We will make the first strike. Mara's fingers moved quickly. Coordinates locked. Captain, weapons systems powering up. Though the Resolve carried no heavy artillery like the coalition cruisers, it had its own unique weapons, small, precision energy pulses designed for quick, targeted strikes. The real power of the ship was its speed and clever technology. In the engineering bay, Chief Ramos adjusted the power flow. All systems green. We're ready when you are. Daniel looked at his crew. This is our moment. We strike the Karth flagship before it can recover. Far across the battlefield, the Dominion flagship groaned as its systems flickered on and off. The pulse emitters were still causing damage, but the Karth were starting to respond. Shield generators hummed as they tried to stabilize. Repair drones swarmed the hull, attempting to remove the attacking devices. The flagship's commander, a tall Karth with dark red scales and piercing eyes, clenched his claws in frustration. Destroy the intruders, he ordered. Find the human ship and crush it. Swarming Karth fighters broke away from the main fleet, racing toward the Resolve with blazing engines and laser fire. Daniel's ship twisted sharply to avoid the incoming attackers. The Resolve was built for agility, able to dart through gaps no larger warship could enter. The small human crew worked as one, dodging bursts of laser fire and tracking enemy fighters with precise targeting systems. Mara, I need a route through their lines, Daniel ordered. Mara's eyes scanned the sensors. There's a gap near the flagship's rear, but it's narrow and heavily defended. We'll take it, Daniel said without hesitation. The Resolve sped toward the gap, weaving through beams of laser fire and missile trails. The ship's shields flared as they absorbed hits, but the hull held firm. Behind them, the coalition fleet moved forward, taking advantage of the distraction. Heavy cruisers fired volleys at weakened Karth ships, while fighters swarmed enemy vessels. On the Vorun, Admiral Trask watched the Resolve's bold move with growing respect. That human is reckless, but effective, he muttered inside the Resolve. The crew held their breath. The ship entered the narrow gap between the Karth flagship and its escort ships. Daniel's hands moved with steady precision, adjusting speed and angle to avoid collisions. Suddenly, an enemy fighter appeared directly ahead, firing a burst of lasers. Mara quickly locked weapons and fired back. The fighter exploded in a flash of light, but more were coming fast, evasive maneuvers. Daniel commanded. The Resolve rolled and darted, barely escaping another barrage of fire. As they neared the flagship, Daniel gave the order, "Deploy drones. Target the flagship's weapons systems." The hatch opened again, and a new wave of pulse emitter drones flew out like a swarm of glowing bees. The drones sped toward the flagship's weapon arrays, attaching themselves carefully. Back on the flagship, systems began failing once more. Weapon turrets froze mid-rotation, and energy cannons powered down. The Karth commander roared in anger. "Stop that ship at all costs." The Resolve wasn't done. Daniel knew the Karth would try to hunt them down, so he ordered a quick retreat. After the drone release, the ship weaved back through the chaos, dodging missiles and laser fire. Despite damage to the shields, the hull remained intact. The small human crew worked fast to repair systems and reload drones. Meanwhile, the Coalition fleet pressed their attack. With the flagship's weapons offline, the Karth line was vulnerable. Coalition ships moved in to strike hard. Admiral Trask's voice boomed through the comm channels. "Push forward. This is our chance." The Karth Dominion was reeling, but they were not defeated yet. Their fleet still had power and would fight to the last ship. Captain Daniel sat back for a moment. Breathing heavily, the battle was only beginning. But the humans had made their mark. "We showed them what one ship can do," he said quietly. Lieutenant Mara smiled. "They won't forget us anytime soon." Chief Ramos nodded. "Let's keep it that way." Outside, the battle raged on, but in the heart of the fight, the small human ship danced like a spark in a storm, bright, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. The space battle stretched on, the sky filled with streaks of light and explosions. The Resolve was small among giants, but it moved with the speed and skill of a dancer. Captain Daniel watched the battle unfold, knowing their time was running short. "Lieutenant Mara," Daniel said, voice calm but firm, "it's time to make the next move." Mara nodded, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. "What's the plan, sir?" Daniel turned to his crew. "We can't just keep dodging and sending drones. We need to hit the heart of the enemy's power, their command center on the flagship." Chief Engineer Ramos adjusted settings in the engineering bay. "That area is the most heavily defended part of the ship." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Exactly. That's why we need speed and surprise." The Resolve began to accelerate, weaving past larger Coalition ships and heading straight for the damaged Dominion flagship. The pulse emitters had weakened the enemy's defenses, but the flagship still held power. The Karth fleet noticed the small human ship moving boldly forward. Missiles were launched, lasers fired in a desperate attempt to stop the tiny intruder. "Brace for impact," Mara warned. The Resolve twisted sharply, dodging each attack by a fraction of a second. Shields flickered under the fire, but held firm, almost. "There," Daniel said. Inside the flagship, the Karth commander paced his command bridge. The ship's systems were failing, but they still had fight left. "Destroy that human ship," he barked. No matter the cost, the Karth fighters swarmed toward the Resolve, but the human crew was ready. The ship's weapons pulsed rapidly, firing precise bursts of energy that took down attackers with skill. Daniel's voice was steady. "Keep the shields up. We don't have much time." The Resolve slipped past the last line of defense and locked onto the flagship's command center. The pulse emitter drones were ready again, carried this time on small robotic arms extended from the ship's hull. "Deploy drones now," Daniel ordered. The hatch opened, and a dozen drones flew out. They zipped toward the flagship's bridge area, dodging enemy fire as they went. On the flagship, alarms blared louder. Karth officers shouted orders, trying to repel the invisible attackers. Drones at the command center. One yelled, "They are inside the hull. The pulse emitters activated, sending sharp waves of energy through the ship's systems. LEDs flickered, controls failed, and communication lines broke down. The flagship shuddered violently. The command bridge was plunged into darkness, forcing the Karth officers to work blindly. Daniel watched carefully. They're losing control. Now we press the attack. The Resolve fired its energy pulses at the flagship's weapons and engines. Each shot was precise, weakening the giant ship further. The flagship's massive turret spun to face the small attacker but failed to lock on. Its engines faltered, slowing the great ship in the void. Admiral Trask's voice came over the comm. "Incredible work, human. You have turned the tide." Daniel nodded quietly. "We're not done yet." The Coalition fleet pushed forward, taking advantage of the chaos. Karth ships began to fall back, their formation broken and confused. The Resolve stayed close to the flagship, ready to strike again if needed. The human crew moved quickly, repairing damage and launching more drones. Suddenly, a new threat appeared. From the depths of the Karth fleet, a shadowy ship emerged, larger and faster than any before. Its black hull was nearly invisible against space, and it moved with deadly speed. Mara gasped. "Captain, that ship is coming straight for us." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We can't let it catch us." The ship fired long-range energy blasts, aiming to cripple the Resolve before it could react. The human ship twisted and darted, barely avoiding the blasts. The new enemy was fast and powerful, but the Resolve's crew stayed focused. "Return fire," Daniel ordered. The Resolve fired bursts of energy that forced the shadowy ship to pull back for a moment. "Hold your course," Daniel said. "We have to finish the flagship first." The pulse emitter drones continued to disable systems on the flagship, and the ship's defenses crumbled. The flagship's commander roared in frustration. "This is not over," he said. Daniel looked out the viewport at the vast battlefield. The Coalition fleets were moving forward, pushing the Karth back. He turned to his crew. "We've done more than anyone expected. One ship was enough to make a difference." Mara smiled. "We showed them what humans can do." The Resolve prepared for the next wave, ready to fight on. The battle was far from over, but the humans had already changed its course. Sometimes, one ship was all it took. The battle had reached a critical moment. The Dominion flagship floated, like a wounded giant, crippled but still dangerous. Its shields flickered weakly and weapons were barely functioning. But the Karth fleet was far from defeated. Captain Daniel sat in the command chair of the Resolve, sweat beading on his brow. The tiny ship had done more damage than anyone expected. But the fight was far from over. "Lieutenant Mara," Daniel said quietly, "we need to keep the pressure on. The Karth will try to regroup and strike back." Mara nodded, fingers flying over the controls. "I'm ready, Captain." Round the Resolve, the Coalition fleet pushed forward. The once solid Karth formation was now a scattered group of desperate ships. Explosions rocked the void as Coalition vessels struck hard, but the Karth were relentless. Small groups of their fighters broke away, trying to flank the Coalition ships. Their remaining capital ships gathered strength for a final push. Daniel's ship moved with grace and speed. The Resolve was small and agile, weaving through the battle like a bird among giants. It avoided enemy fire and targeted damaged ships with precision. "Ramos," Daniel said, "how are the pulse emitters holding?" "Still stable," Ramos replied from engineering, "but the drones are losing numbers. We need to be careful." Daniel nodded. "Keep launching replacements. We can't lose this edge." The human ship sped toward a cluster of Karth cruisers. The pulse emitters had crippled some already, but others were still a threat. "Deploy drones," Daniel ordered. More of the tiny machines poured out, heading to their targets with speed and purpose. As they attached, systems began failing again. Engines sputtered. Weapons went offline. The Coalition fleet cheered every success, rallying their strength. Suddenly, a warning flashed on the Resolve's screen. "Incoming missiles, fast and numerous missiles. Inbound," Mara shouted. Daniel pushed the controls. "Evasive maneuvers." The ship twisted sharply, dodging the deadly fire. The shields absorbed a few hits, but flickered dangerously. Shields at 50%, Mara warned. Despite the danger, Daniel refused to slow down. He knew if they stopped, the Karth would regain power and the battle could be lost. The resolve shot forward, weaving through the wreckage of space. More drones launched, continuing to disable enemy ships. On the Vorun, Admiral Trask watched the battle with growing admiration. That human captain is remarkable, he said. Their small ship is doing what no fleet could do. Rollo, the Varnian tactician, nodded in agreement. It is the human spirit, their cleverness and courage that makes them strong. Back on the Resolve, Daniel's comm crackled. Captain, we have a new target, a Karth dreadnought trying to break through the coalition lines. Daniel's eyes lit up. Plot a course. We can't let that happen. The dreadnought was massive, its hull thick with armor, but the pulse emitters could reach it, and the Resolve could move fast. The ship darted toward the dreadnought, dodging enemy fire. Mara locked weapons. Deploy drones on my mark, Daniel said. Ready, Mara confirmed. As they neared the dreadnought, the Resolve launched the drones. The tiny machines swarmed the great ship, attaching to its hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, systems began to fail. Engines sputtered, weapons jammed. The dreadnought slowed, losing momentum. Coalition ships seized the moment, firing volleys that battered the slow giant. The Karth fleet's morale began to break. Their once mighty formation was in shambles. Ships fled the battle, some sending distress signals. Daniel felt a rare smile. We're turning the tide. Mara grinned. One ship was enough, but Daniel remained cautious. Stay alert. The Karth will not give up easily. Suddenly, the Resolve sensors detected a new threat, a group of fast attack ships closing in. Enemy interceptors closing fast, Mara warned. Daniel's hands moved quickly. Prepare for defense. We need to hold them off. The Resolves. Small weapons fired in rapid bursts. The ship dodged incoming fire, taking out several attackers. The battle grew tense as the interceptors pressed their attack. After a tense few minutes, the interceptors broke off, their numbers reduced. The Resolve's crew breathed a quiet sigh of relief. The coalition fleet, inspired by the human ship's success, rallied to push the Karth back. The enemy forces began a retreat, some ships slipping away into hyperspace. Admiral Trask ordered the fleet to secure the battlefield. Daniel looked out the viewport at the damaged, but still burning Karth ships. We did what no one expected, he said softly. Mara nodded. Sometimes, one ship is all it takes. The Resolve prepared to leave the battle behind, its mission nearly complete. But Daniel knew the war was far from over. They had made a difference today, and that was enough to give hope. The battlefield was quiet now. The Karth Dominion's fleet had retreated, broken and scattered. The once imposing war machines were damaged, some burning, others fleeing through hyperspace. The coalition fleet held their formation, battered but victorious. Captain Daniel sat in the command chair of the Resolve, feeling a deep sense of relief mixed with fatigue. The little human ship had changed the course of the war. Lieutenant Mara stood beside him, her face tired but bright. We did it, she said softly. Daniel nodded. One ship was enough. One ship made all the difference. On the Vorun, Admiral Trask watched the battlefield through the main screen. His sharp eyes took in the broken Karth fleet, then the lone human ship holding steady. You have our thanks, Captain Daniel, Trask said through the comm channel. Your bravery and skill saved many lives today. Daniel answered simply. We only did what was needed. The coalition commanders gathered for a meeting. Rollo, the Varnian tactician, spoke with respect. Humans are unpredictable. They think differently, fight differently. We underestimated them, Admiral Trask agreed. We will invite the humans to join the coalition fully. Their courage and technology are invaluable. Back on the Resolve, Daniel prepared a report for Human Command. Tell them the coalition won because we stood with them, he said. Lieutenant Mara smiled. Maybe next time we won't come alone. Daniel chuckled softly. Maybe. The crew gathered in the small mess hall. They shared stories and quiet laughter. Despite the hardships, they felt proud. They had faced impossible odds and come out victorious. outside the ship. The stars shone brightly. The war was not over, but hope had returned for the first time. Humans and the coalition stood together as allies against a common enemy. Captain Daniel looked out the viewport. "This is only the beginning," he said quietly. Lieutenant Mars stood beside him. "We'll be ready." The Resolve sailed on, a symbol of courage, hope, and the power of one.